Welcome to r/Amithedevil, where people share stories about questionable choices and ask the internet for judgment. Today's story comes from someone who gambled away their kid's college fund. Yeah, you read that right. Imagine trusting your parent with something as sacred as your future education, only for them to risk it on a roll of the dice or a spin of the wheel. That's exactly what happened here, and the big question is, am I the devil for doing what I did? Before you jump to conclusions, stick around. This isn't just about reckless gambling. It's about desperation, temptation, and some complicated family stuff that you don't usually hear about. The post is casual but tense, and the writer clearly wants to know if they're the bad guy, or if they had good reasons. Gambling is always a gamble, but gambling with your children's college money, that's next level. So what really happened? Did they lose everything or somehow win big? And how did the family react? The suspense builds as the story unfolds. Now, let's get into the details of this wild ride and see if our OP really deserves to be called the devil. Our OP, let's call him Mike, has two kids, one aged 14 and the other 11. Like most parents, Mike dreamed of giving his kids a solid start in life, which included saving for college. For years, Mike set aside a dedicated fund just for their future education. He wasn't wealthy by any means, but he was careful, making sure this money was untouched. College is expensive, and Mike knew the importance of having that safety net. Mike also had a gambling habit, but nothing wild. He kept a separate fund specifically for gambling, so it wouldn't interfere with family finances. It was a way to blow off steam, and he always kept things responsible. However, when the pandemic hit, life turned upside down. Mike's girlfriend lost her job, and suddenly bills and rent had to be prioritized. The gambling fund got drained to keep the household afloat. The stable money Mike usually relied on to gamble was gone, and with the casinos reopening after months of lockdown, Mike felt the pull to gamble again. It had been over a year since his last visit to the casino, and the urge was strong. Emotionally, Mike was stressed and craving that rush gambling gave him, but with no separate funds available, he faced a tough choice: give up gambling entirely or use money that wasn't supposed to be touched. After some serious internal debate, Mike decided to take money from the kids' college fund. It wasn't an easy decision, but he rationalized it with the thought that there was still plenty of time to make the money back before college started. Plus, he told himself it was a calculated risk, not just reckless spending. With that, Mike set the stage for what would become a gamble far bigger than any he had taken before. The tension was high, and the consequences would soon follow. The moment Mike decided to use his kids' college fund to gamble wasn't a snap judgment. It was a slow, heavy process filled with conflicting feelings. He knew this money was meant for their future, something sacred and untouchable. But the pandemic had shaken everything, and the itch to gamble again was growing stronger every day. Mike kept telling himself that there was still time. His oldest was only 14, and the younger one was just 11. That meant what? About 4 to 7 years before the money actually had to be there? Surely, if he won, he could put it all back, and then some. The college fund wasn't gone forever, just temporarily relocated. He weighed the risks carefully. What if he lost? That thought made his stomach twist, but Mike rationalized it by remembering he had some gambling skills and good instincts. Plus, the casinos were reopening after a long shutdown, and the odds seemed favorable. He told himself it was a calculated risk, not pure recklessness. If I lose, I lose, he thought. But if I win, we're all better off. Even as the tension built, Mike felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. This wasn't just any bet. It was a gamble on his children's future. The stakes were high, and the pressure was crushing. Would he walk away with a win or a nightmare? Only time would tell. Mike and his group of friends decided to take a trip to Vegas as soon as the casinos reopened. For weeks, he had been feeling the urge to gamble, and now the chance was finally here. Before heading out, Mike made sure they all got COVID tested. Safety first, he reminded himself. As they drove to the glitzy lights and loud sounds of the casino floor, Mike's heart pounded with anticipation and nerves. Once inside, the atmosphere hit him all at once. Flashing lights, ringing machines, cheers from winners, and groans from losers. Mike started small, betting cautiously at the blackjack table. His palms were sweaty, but his mind stayed focused. Every chip he pushed forward felt heavier than usual because it wasn't just his money, it was the college fund. Gradually, Mike increased his bets. The thrill surged through him as he watched the cards fall in his favor. He could feel the weight of every decision. The line between luck and disaster blurred. Friends cheered him on, but Mike's attention was locked on the game. Time seemed to slow as tension built. Then, the tide turned. Mike began winning hand after hand, the chips piling up in front of him. His confidence grew, but the pressure didn't let up. This wasn't just about gambling anymore. It was about saving what he had taken and more. With every win, hope replaced fear. By the end of the night, Mike had not only recovered the college fund money he used, but also made a sizable profit. The gamble had paid off, for now. When the chips finally stopped stacking in front of Mike, his heart was pounding with a mix of disbelief and excitement. He had turned half of the kids' college fund into a significant win, nearly a quarter more than what he'd started with. The adrenaline rush was overwhelming, and for a moment, he felt like he had beaten the odds. This was exactly what he'd hoped for. Eager to share the good news, Mike grabbed his phone and called Sarah. His voice was bright and shaky as he told her about the win. "We're going to be okay," he said. I doubled down and came out ahead. He could almost hear her smile over the line. But instead of happiness, Sarah's voice cracked with shock and anger. "Wait, where did you get the money to gamble with?" she demanded. When Mike confessed it was from their kids' college fund, the tone shifted to disbelief and outrage. She yelled, accusing him of being irresponsible, reckless, and selfish. The good news didn't matter. He had risked their children's future for a gamble. The conversation quickly spiraled into an argument. Mike tried to explain his reasoning, how there was still time to put the money back, how he only wanted to gamble responsibly. But Sarah wasn't hearing it. She was furious and hurt, and the trust between them felt shattered in seconds. Confused and frustrated, Mike hung up, unable to understand why winning caused such a problem. "I didn't lose the money," he thought. "I made us more." But Sarah's reaction told him this wasn't just about money. It was about something deeper, broken trust and crossed boundaries. In that moment, the victory felt hollow. Mike realized this gamble might have cost him more than just money. It could cost his family. The days after the argument were some of the hardest Mike had ever faced. Sarah stopped answering his calls. Texts went unanswered. Even when they were in the same house, silence filled the rooms like a heavy fog. The warmth and laughter they once shared vanished, replaced by cold tension. It felt like walking on eggshells. Mike sat alone, staring at his phone, replaying the fight over and over in his head. He knew he had taken a big risk. Taking money from the kids' college fund wasn't something to take lightly, but he kept telling himself that he planned to pay it back before they needed it. He wasn't careless, just desperate to gamble again after a long break. Still, guilt gnawed at him, especially as he saw how much he had hurt Sarah. Around the house, everything felt different. The kids were unaware of the drama, but Mike could sense the strain affecting the family. Meals were quieter. Conversations stopped before they could start. Sarah barely looked at him. Mike wished he could explain himself better, but the words seemed to get stuck in his throat. Feeling lost, Mike turned to the internet. He shared his story on forums and social media, hoping for some understanding, or maybe judgment he could learn from. Some people sided with him, saying he was responsible since he won. Others called him reckless and selfish. The mixed reactions only added to his confusion. Every day Mike wondered, would Sarah ever forgive him? Could their relationship recover? And what would happen if the kids found out? Would they understand or hate him? The uncertainty hung over him like a storm cloud, making it hard to think about anything else. Mike realized this wasn't just about money. It was about trust, family, and the future. The gamble had shaken everything. Now, he had to wait and hope the pieces could be put back together before it was too late. After sharing his story online, Mike quickly found himself at the center of a heated debate. Reddit users and social media commenters jumped in, ready to judge him for his risky decision. The responses were loud and divided. On one side, many people called Mike the devil. They accused him of being selfish and reckless, risking his children's future for a personal thrill. "Who gambles with college money?" one commenter wrote bluntly. Others said no win could ever justify taking such a risk. "You can't put a price on trust," another user said. These voices made Mike feel the full weight of their disappointment, but not everyone was harsh. Some sympathized with Mike's struggle. They understood the craving to gamble after a long break and appreciated his honesty. A few pointed out that since he won, the family actually ended up better off financially. "If you're going to take risks, at least come out ahead," one user joked. Others reminded people that life is complicated, and sometimes people make mistakes but still mean well. Among the comments, a few witty replies stood out. One user wrote, "He's like a high-stakes magician. Now you see the money, now you don't. Except it's college funds." Another said, "Winning doesn't make you the devil, but gambling with the future might." Mike read all these judgments late into the night. He felt conflicted. Part of him wanted to defend his actions, while another part realized how serious the situation was. The mixed reactions made him question what he truly thought about himself. He wasn't sure if he was the devil or just a man who made a desperate choice. The online world's judgment added another layer of suspense to his already tangled story. In the quiet moments after the storm of anger and judgment, Mike found himself alone with his thoughts. For the first time, he took a hard look at what he had done. Gambling away half of his kids' college fund, even if he won, was a huge risk. He realized that no amount of winning could erase the potential damage to his family's future and trust. He admitted to himself that the gamble was reckless. He could have looked for other ways to satisfy his craving, maybe smaller bets with money he earned or saved separately. But when the pandemic hit and jobs were lost, those safety nets disappeared. It was easy to justify using the college fund because there was still time to pay it back. Yet deep down, Mike knew time wasn't a guarantee, and life rarely went as planned. He thought about the anger and hurt in his spouse's voice, The trust that had been broken. Trust, he realized, was the most fragile thing in their family. No win at a casino could repair that overnight. The college fund was more than just money. It was a promise to his children, a foundation for their future. Mike felt ashamed, but also determined. He knew he had to make things right, not just financially, but emotionally. He began to think seriously about how he could regain trust, repair relationships, and prove he was responsible. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. The biggest question now was, would there be enough time to fix what was broken before the kids found out? Could he save their future and his family? That uncertainty weighed heavily on him. His story was far from over, and the suspense of what came next kept him awake at night. Mike understood the stakes better than ever, and deep down, he hoped he wasn't the devil, but only time would tell. After days of reflection and tension, Mike finally began to map out a plan to make things right. First and foremost, he knew he had to rebuild the college fund, no excuses. He planned to set aside a fixed portion of his paycheck every month, cutting back on unnecessary expenses and finding extra work if needed. Slowly but surely, he wanted that fund to grow again, to make up for the gamble. But money was only part of the equation. Mike understood that trust had been shaken, and rebuilding it would take time and effort. He promised to be transparent with his spouse, sharing every financial decision moving forward. They agreed to attend couples counseling, hoping professional guidance would help heal the wounds and strengthen their bond. Communication, Mike realized, was key. No more secrets or impulsive decisions. He wanted his family to know he was serious about change, about putting them first. Even though the path ahead was uncertain, he was ready to face the consequences and work hard to regain their confidence. As for the suspense that had gripped their lives since the gamble, Mike felt a cautious hope. The damage wasn't irreparable, but only time would tell if his efforts would be enough. Would his spouse forgive him? Would the kids understand when the time came? These questions lingered, but Mike was determined to answer them with honesty and action. In the end, Mike hoped this chapter would be remembered not as a disaster, but as a turning point, a moment of learning and growth. He wasn't perfect, but he was committed to becoming a better father, partner, and person. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Mike felt ready to face it head-on. Thanks for listening to this wild story from r/Amithedevil. Now it's your turn. Do you think Mike was the devil for gambling his kid's college fund? Or was he just human, making a big mistake? Share your judgment respectfully below. Let's keep this discussion thoughtful and kind. If you enjoyed this episode, stay tuned for our next Reddit story. It's full of surprises you won't want to miss. Thanks again for being here and joining the conversation. Remember, every story has two sides, and your perspective matters.